Good morning, Delaware. This is DETV's Good Morning Wilmington, and I'm your host, Kristin Holden.
And I'm Jordan Hines. How you doing, Kristin?
Hey, Jordan. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well. How was your weekend?
It was great. Yours?
I had chilled. I had a great weekend.
Nothing
But
wrong
what
with
I'm
that.
excited to share and announce to everyone is our new co-host,
Yes.
JJ. What's going
Hi,
on,
JJ.
JJ?
Hi.
How are you?
Yes.
I am so good. I am so excited to be here. You
Yeah.
have no idea.
We're excited,
We're excited
to
to have you here with
Yeah.
us. Definitely.
We're all looking good
I
together.
know.
I think we
Fill
make a
out the
sharp
table.
team already.
Fill
I
out
mean,
the
look
table. Definitely.
Look what we got going on.
Coordinating.
Yeah.
And JJ, coming up, you're about to go sit on the couch with someone, right?
Yes, I am. I'm actually getting ready to go sit on the couch with Senator Chris Coons, who will be joining us
Nice.
today.
Nice.
Yeah.
Jumping right
I
in.
can't
I
wait
love
to
it.
watch.
Jumping right in.
I
Let's
can't wait
do
to
it.
watch you too. I know
can't
that's
wait.
going to be good. And Kristin, you have someone that you're going to
Yes,
talk
I'm going to
to.
sit down with Coach Stan Waterman. He's having a title change. Really exciting.
Ooh.
Yes, indeed. So we'll dive into that in a little while as well.
And then probably after your show, we're going to sit down with our Congresswoman,
Yes,
right?
Congresswoman Lisa Blunt
gonna be good.
Rochester. I'm so excited about this one.
It's going to be good. She's
Indeed.
definitely going to have some impactful
I know.
insight
We have a
for
few
us.
key points we're
You
gonna
know,
hit on
whenever
with
I talk to her, she gives us a lot of energy.
Yes.
It's all love and energy. And then I had the pleasure of sitting down with Dr. Joan Coker. I'm going to sit down with her, and as well as her mother. I cannot wait to sit down with both of them. With Dr. Coker, I've been watching her in the field, handling this pandemic on the front line, getting everyone vaccinated. So I can't wait to talk to Dr. Coker and her mom with everything that's been going on last
The
week.
new facility.
New facility. I
I'm
cannot
excited
wait till
about
they
that.
educate
That's a
us on
big
that.
one for the Riverside
Yeah,
community.
it's going to be real good.
Yes.
And then I'm so excited. I got a personal privilege. I get to sit down with all the dads of the community.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't wait to talk to them.
That's
and
very
get
exciting.
their insight on fatherhood and manhood. So
Listen,
pray
as
for me.
a woman, I'm
a
looking
little
forward
nervous.
to hearing their perspective
I'm
on
a little
some things.
nervous, so
So I
pray
think
for
it'll
me.
be great.
I was going to say,
Yeah,
that's
JJ
got to
and
be
I.
intimidating.
It is.
It's like
It
you're
is.
just walking into
It
a
is.
room full of fathers.
It's one thing to deal with one of them at a time, but now I got all of them.
Yeah.
This is. Oof.
I mean, I can see the sweat.
Can you see it
now,
starting?
Jordan.
Like,
Yeah, I can.
God.
I can.
Ugh, and they give you that eye.
Yeah.
You know how dads are.
The Hawkeye.
So I cannot wait. So I'm looking forward to this show.
Most
I
definitely.
cannot wait till we get to sit down with all our interviewees.
I know.
It's
gonna
going to
be
be a
good
great show.
It's gonna be a great show. All
Exactly.
right.
Government doesn't make a move without an agenda, some type of plan. The problem is we haven't been on the agenda. Sometimes we're overlooked. Sometimes our interests aren't the interest of those in power. I'm your host, Kerwin Gaines, on DETV's new show, The Agenda. We're going to do our best to ensure that you, Delawareans, are knowledgeable about what's going on in the Assembly. Federal government, local government, it doesn't matter. We're going to do our best to ensure that folks that make the agenda on a daily basis have to answer for it. Let them explain what they're doing. If it affects you, it's on the agenda.
Welcome, everybody. We are really excited about our next guest. He has been really busy, working really hard in the Senate, working really hard getting things done, and we are so glad that he has made the time to stop by and visit us today and talk to us a little bit about everything that's going on. Welcome, Senator Chris Coons. We are so happy to have you here.
Thank you, JJ. Great to be on with you.
Yes, thank you. So I know you've been really busy. There's a lot going on. There's a lot to, for us and the viewers to really digest. But I know you just took 2 recent trips, one bipartisan trip to South Korea. Could you tell us a little bit about that trip and what happened there?
Sure. As you know, we are continuing to come out of the COVID-19 pandemic, not just here in Delaware in the United States, but around the world. President Biden has been relentlessly focused on getting shots in arms, and a majority of Americans are now vaccinated. But around the world, we've got countries that are close partners and allies where they've only got 2 or 3% vaccination rates. South Korea and Taiwan handled the pandemic really well early on. In fact, Taiwan only ever had 12 fatalities from the pandemic in the first year. They sent us PPE, masks, and respirators a year ago when we were struggling. Taiwan sent us 10 million masks, and both South Korea and Taiwan sent us other equipment that helped us in our early stages. They're now seeing the new variant from India, which is more transmissive, which is more contagious, causing a resurgence of the COVID pandemic in these two countries. So I traveled with a bipartisan group of senators, Senator Duckworth of Illinois, Senator Sullivan of Alaska, both of whom are combat veterans, and we visited South Korea and Taiwan, which are countries we have a critical security partnership with. They're very close to China. They're getting a lot of pressure from China in their region. We met with the 4-star general who's in charge of 30,000 American troops in Korea. We went up to the DMZ, the demilitarized zone between South Korea and North Korea, and we met with the leadership of two huge companies, SK and Samsung, that are investing billions of dollars in the United States in manufacturing semiconductor chips and batteries for electric vehicles here as a result of President Biden's summit with President Moon of South Korea that just happened 10 days ago.
Wow, definitely. So a lot happened
Yeah,
on your trip
it was
there.
busy.
Very busy, absolutely, and such a great thing too, helping each other and getting this COVID pandemic under wraps and really moving forward. So that's a great trip. I know you also went to Tulsa, Oklahoma recently as well, and I believe you had some companions on that trip. I think you had Lisa Blunt Rochester join you,
Correct.
and Joe Biden himself joined you as well, I believe.
So I went with a group called Faith and Politics that is a bipartisan group that Congressman John Lewis led for years that did an annual congressional civil rights pilgrimage to Selma, Montgomery, Birmingham, and to other places. And Congresswoman Lisa Blunt Rochester, Congressman Jim Clyburn, Congresswoman Barbara Lee were all there. We had a series of great events. We worshiped at Vernon AME Church, which is right in the heart of Greenwood of North Tulsa. And for anyone who's watching who doesn't know this history, in 1921 in North Tulsa, in the Greenwood district, there was the worst race massacre that's documented in American history. Hundreds and hundreds of white vigilantes, supported by the local police department and the National Guard, attacked and burned to the ground a 35 square block area that was so prosperous it was known as Black Wall Street. This was a solemn commemoration. It's the first time an American president has visited this area, has marked on this history, and I think it connects with some efforts that Congresswoman Blunt Rochester and Senator Carper and I, along with some local leaders, have been making here in Delaware. I grew up out in Hockessin, and a quarter mile from my childhood home was a little red brick building that I didn't really know what it was. I drove past it on my way to elementary school, middle school. My mom was a public school teacher at the time. No one ever said to me, that little building was part of Brown versus Board of Education. It was the so-called colored school number 107 in Hockessin, and it was the school at issue in a case that became part of Brown versus Board in front of the Supreme Court. And the piece of this Delawareans can be proud of is that there were two cases, one from this Hockessin Elementary School, one from Claymont High School, where the then young Chancellor, Colin Seitz, actually ordered the integration of schools. In the other four cases, judges opposed the integration of schools. All those 5 cases were brought together, taken to the Supreme Court, and in 1954, in Brown versus Board, they ordered the integration of all American public schools. Congressman Jim Clyburn of South Carolina also has some sites in South Carolina that were part of their case that was part of Brown versus Board. Jim Clyburn, Lisa Blunt Rochester, and I, we have a bill that we are moving through the House and Senate to add these sites in Delaware to the National Historic Sites associated with Brown versus Board. How's this relevant to Tulsa? In Tulsa and in the state of Oklahoma, the history of the race massacre just wasn't taught. I met someone my age who'd grown up in North Tulsa, never heard about it, never taught in the schools, never discussed. If we don't look at some of the most difficult, brutal, violent, racist episodes in American history, we can't overcome them. We can't be honest with each other, and we can't repair the harm that's been caused by a lot of things that have happened in American history.
Absolutely.
I also had a different meeting in Tulsa. I met with the leaders of the Cherokee Nation. We don't have federally recognized tribes here in Delaware. The Cherokee are going to help me make connections and build a relationship with the Lenape, who are called the Delaware Indians. You may not know this. But the Lenni Lenape tribe, or the so-called Delaware Indians, were forcibly removed from here to Ohio to Oklahoma. And so there are 3 different federally recognized Delaware tribes or bands of different tribes in Oklahoma. I'm looking forward to building a relationship with them. As the senator from Delaware, one of the things I'm often struck by is how important indigenous rights and Native American issues are for Western senators, and how little they've come across my desk or my table, because I don't have very many constituents who ever raised them. Yeah. So, trip to Tulsa, trip to South Korea and Taiwan, and then right back for a very busy week in the Senate this week.
Absolutely. I mean, there's been so much happening in the Senate this past week. Two major things are the voting rights, the two voting right acts that are coming up. I know that those are two really big pieces, as well as the infrastructure bill is also sort of at the top of the headlines. Could you tell us anything about that, where they are maybe, or?
Before I get to that,
yeah,
I'm just going to say one really positive thing that happened this week.
Okay.
Was we took up, debated, and passed the broadly bipartisan U.S. Competition and Innovation Act.
Yes, absolutely.
This authorizes $250 billion in new research and development, manufacturing, innovation. It's designed to make us more competitive with China. It's got a lot to do with semiconductor chip research and manufacturing. Del State and UD will directly benefit from some of the provisions in this bill. It was the thing we got done.
Done.
These other things are things we haven't gotten done yet.
Well, it's always a process, right?
That's right. There's a bipartisan group of senators that is trying to negotiate to an agreement on infrastructure. What's infrastructure? For the purposes of that conversation, we're talking roads and bridges, tunnels, ports, airports, dams, things that across most of the United States and here in Delaware are decaying, because we put a huge amount of money into our interstate highway system in the 50s and 60s. We haven't really maintained it or upgraded it. In fact, right here in Wilmington, we've got a huge project going on 95 to rebuild it. We need to be doing comparable projects around the country to make our country more competitive globally. So that's what that was about. There is some real progress on infrastructure. I am hopeful we're going to see an announcement next week. Okay. The other bill that I'm hopeful we're going to get to resolution on is a bill that is principally being negotiated between Senator Booker of New Jersey and Senator Scott of South Carolina. I'm on the Judiciary Committee, which is relevant for criminal justice. This is a policing reform bill. The anniversary of George Floyd's murder just passed. That was President Biden's deadline for getting something done. I spoke to both Senator Booker and Scott yesterday, and they and the different civil rights groups and advocacy groups and policing groups that they've been meeting with are optimistic they can get this done. Now, when it comes to the For the People Act, which is S1, which would strengthen voting and access to the ballot box nationally, and the John Lewis Voting Rights Restoration Act, we don't currently have a pathway towards enactment for either of them, because fairly publicly, Senator Manchin of West Virginia last weekend said he's not planning to vote either to end the filibuster, which would be required for us to pass them, or for S1, the For the People Act. So Joe, who I talked to about this, is negotiating in our caucus how could we slim down the For the People Act to get something that he's willing to support and co-sponsor, and then renew the conversation about how do we get this done. We've seen legislation now in several states, including Oklahoma and Texas and Georgia and elsewhere, to make it harder to vote. We shouldn't be doing that. We should be making it easier to vote. We should have secure voting. We should have fair and predictable voting, but we should make it easier, not harder to vote.
Well, thank you, Senator. I mean, there has been a lot going on, especially in the Senate agenda. I know we have to wrap up our interview and our time together soon, but just wanted to bring up one thing. I know, especially at home locally, we had the mayor, Mike Przicki, recently kind of address the issue with the uptick in gun violence here in Wilmington. So I'd just like to get your input on that and your thoughts and feelings.
So I'm on the Judiciary Committee, which is responsible for federal law enforcement and crime prevention, and I'm on the Appropriations Subcommittee that provides funding for all of federal law enforcement and for the Department of Justice. On that subcommittee just yesterday, Attorney General Merrick Garland was in front of us presenting the budget that the Biden administration is asking for. I pointedly asked him about programs like body-worn cameras, like improvements in what the ATF, the FBI, the DEA, the Marshals are doing for local communities. Attorney General Garland and the Biden Department of Justice are proposing a brand new $100 million program to intervene in violence. there is a rise in gun violence in particular and in violent crime in lots of cities in the United States, not just here in Wilmington.
Yeah, I read the numbers on New York, Atlanta, Philadelphia, it's everywhere.
The number of shootings that have happened just in the last 10 days here in Delaware is heartbreaking. We are seeing more and more young men shooting each other. The number of both victims and perpetrators who are below 20 is really stunning. And so we just confirmed a new head for the U.S. Marshals, a new head for the ATF. I've met with both of them. I'm reaching out to them, and I'm saying to the Attorney General and to these federal law enforcement agencies, we need more help. Wilmington police are doing the best they can, but we need more resources, both for policing and, frankly, to invest in community violence prevention and in violence interruption. There's already a program here trying to address that, but I think there's more we can do. The last point, I don't think we do enough to provide trauma-informed professional mental health services to people who are having a mental health crisis. And that's often been the cause of officer-involved shootings of citizens, where you've got a citizen who's having a schizophrenic incident or a drug abuse-related incident, and police are not well-trained or equipped to deal with someone who's having a mental health crisis. Yeah. Newcastle County Police has a joint program with Christiana Care, where they've got a unit that responds when the description on 911 sounds like this is a mental health crisis. I also pressed the Attorney General about this program. It's got $35 million federally now. I want to see us add a significant amount more money to it, and I want to see some of that money come here to Delaware.
Absolutely. I think that's a phenomenal program to institute. Absolutely. We cannot thank you enough for all that you do. I know you've been working very hard and just spending this time with us today and giving us the scoop, as it were. So thank you again so much, Senator. We do really appreciate you coming.
Thank you, JJ. Great being on with you.
Thank you.
There's a quote I really like. It says, "A good coach can change a game. A great coach can change a life." Our next guest has received the Delaware Coach of the Year award. He has been the head coach fearlessly of an 8-time state championship winning high school boys varsity basketball team. He's just a kid from the east side of Wilmington, and his name alone, it weighs enough to not need this introduction because he is basketball royalty here in Delaware. However, I'm super honored to have Coach Stan Waterman here with me today. Hi there. Hi. Thank you so much for coming. I'm super excited to have you.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, listen, right now is such a big time, not just in Delaware, but specifically with what you have going on. But before we get into your next title change, you recently had a title change in your family. You're now a granddad.
Yes,
congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
I know you must be super proud of your family. How does it feel?
It feels really good. I mean, I've had people to tell me what this experience was going to be like, becoming a grandfather, or G-Pop, as I'm going to have him call me. But it has exceeded my expectations.
Yeah.
He's fantastic.
That's so awesome. Yes. Listen, once we got off the phone, I gave a call to my brother Aaron, and I was like, guess who I got? Oh my gosh, Coach Waterman's coming on the show. So it's super exciting. My brother says hi, my mom says hi. You know, you do a really great job of cultivating relationships. You've had a very long-standing career with Sanford, and you've touched so many lives. So with this new announcement of you accepting the role as head coach at not just a D1 school, but Delaware's only HBCU, Delaware State University, it's such a really major deal. And not to mention you're a blue hen turning into a hornet, which is interesting, but your successful career right now, you're taking this task of rebuilding the men's basketball program. Why now?
Now, it just seemed that everything is falling into place. And I want to go back to your first point about, and make sure everybody knows that I've been very fortunate and blessed to have some great families, like your brother Aaron, having the opportunity to coach him many years ago. And your family has always been there to support me. And I've had a lot of support along the way. So that's always been one of the key ingredients. In terms of why now, as I said, things just seem to line up. It's a great time for Delaware State University under the direction of Dr. Tony Allen. Some fantastic things are coming out of Dover, and I'm excited to be a part of that. the opportunity to be a head coach at the Division I level. And any high school coach worth their weight in salt would tell you
I bet.
that's always a dream to be a Division I coach.
I
so
can
to have
only
that opportunity
imagine you
come
had
along.
other offers, but this one here, explain why Delaware State University?
Well, again, going back to one of the other key points is to have that opportunity happen right here in my own backyard. I'm a native Delawarean, born and raised right here in the city of Wilmington. Went to Howard High School, stayed home for my college education at the University of Delaware, and so it was a perfect match and a perfect fit. Tony, as I said, Tony Allen and the leadership at Delaware State University right now, I think their goal is to have DSU be the premier HBCU in the country, and I want to be a part of that.
Listen, he's doing some major things, a lot of major changes. Now, anyone who follows college hoops knows that in 2021, the men's program, they were barred from competing in the MEAC tournament. Now, you have such a proven track record of academic greatness as well as basketball greatness. What's your plan to get the program to meet academic standards?
Well, I think the first charge and the first challenge that I want to have and take on is to create a culture. Number one, a culture where there's some pride in understanding that first you're a student athlete, and when you enroll at Delaware State or any other college or university, the number one goal is to get the diploma or the degree. So we're going to make that a focus. That's going to be one of the things that we will focus on. So academic standards, we're going to set some academic standards and expectations about how you represent the program. And then on the basketball court, obviously to get to that point, there are going to be some talented players and a lot of guys coming in with credentials, and just getting them to understand how to play together. Again, it's going to really be about culture and changing the culture.
You have such a standard of excellence when it comes to competing in the basketball arena. I can only understand that there are going to be some challenges, again, because you're rebuilding something. So when it comes to competing at the level that you're accustomed to, do you have a plan in place already to help jumpstart that?
Well, we have a plan in place. I have a plan in place. How soon we are able to begin to execute it right now, I think my focus is to get to know the young men who are returning, to have them get an opportunity to know me and know who I am and what I'm all about and how I operate. So that's one of the things I want to do, get to know those families. I got to hire a staff of assistant coaches, get some people, some quality people around that will help me carry out the vision and achieve the goal. And then I've got to study the MEAC and the league and the competition and find out what's working for them and see how we can compete.
Now that you are ending your time with Sanford, I can only imagine that you have lots of great memories you're taking on with you. Like I said, 8 state championships that you've won during your time with them. What's your fondest memory?
Wow, that's an interesting question. And oftentimes people will ask you, I haven't had the opportunity to win a state championship 8 times. Is there one that means more? Is there one that sticks out more than the other? And the answer to that is they're all unique, and probably the most recent one would be the freshest in your mind. But again, I've had some great experiences. I think back to probably the first state championship. To win one in my first year as a head coach was a unique experience and an exciting time. And then so now I can kind of go full circle and say winning a state championship in 2021 in my last year of coaching is equally exciting. So I have bookends there.
That's so awesome. I can only imagine some of the families are sad to see you go, of course. Do you have any special messages that you'd like to send out to the families, or any special words you'd like to say?
Well, sure. Thank you, and thank you for giving me that opportunity. I always say I will always carry all of the experiences and the relationships that I've built through coaching. And I certainly attribute a lot of my success to former players and former parents and people who've been a part of the whole experience. So any success that I have had, that they have all contributed to that, and I thank them for that. I really do.
You make it easy, I'm telling you. You're a family guy, and that carries over into all that you do. It's just a level of excellence that you have, the way that you carry yourself as a coach, the way you cultivate the relationships, and it's something that your players and students give right back to you. So it's only easy for the families and players to want to support you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I'd probably be remiss if I didn't say I'm proud of you. Talking about one of those families, and as I said, having a chance to
Thank
coach
you.
your brother and watching you grow, and I'm proud of all the things that you have accomplished. And
Thank
what
you
you're
so much.
doing.
I appreciate that.
Congratulations to you.
Thank you. It's a very exciting time again for Delaware State University, as is for everything Delaware right now. But I really appreciate that you're the one for the job. You're going to do great there. I have such confidence in you.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I'm going to need your support and the support of not only the city of Dover and the Delaware State community, but I'd love to see the whole state of Delaware get behind DSU and support us in our new mission.
We got your back. Like I said, you're Delaware royalty here when it comes to basketball. So I'm sure you have all of us at your back cheering you on.
Thank you.
Indeed. Listen, I totally appreciate your time, and maybe you'll come back and see us again soon once you get everything into full swing, and we can report on some greatness that you have going on down there.
Absolutely. Thank
Awesome.
you for having me. I appreciate it.
No worries whatsoever. Thank you again for your time.
While representing us at Tulsa, Oklahoma, she's also addressing gun violence in Wilmington and representing us in Milton, all up and down the state of Delaware. We are so excited to have our Congresswoman Lisa Blunt Rochester. How are you, Congresswoman?
I am
Good morning.
well. Good morning.
Good
Good
to
morning
see
to
you.
both of you, and I'm so excited. Good morning, Wilmington.
Yes.
Yeah.
So so I want to dive right in.
Yeah.
You went to Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Yes.
How
yes.
was that?
Yes.
You know, it was a moving experience. You know, it's funny because a lot of times in this environment, things are so heavy. You know, we've been through a pandemic, the murder of George Floyd, in addition to our own challenges right here in our state, and even an insurrection. And so there's a heaviness about the moment. And so I was invited as a member of the Congressional Black Caucus, and also as a representative from Delaware, to go and meet the survivors of the Tulsa Massacre, to meet their descendants, and also to meet the broader community. And I talk about the heaviness because at the same time there's this heaviness, there's also this inspiration. Seeing those survivors, 107 years old, 106 years old, and 100 years old, recounting what happened and just the past 100 years, and talking about with community members the future and where we can go. And also talking about repairing the breach. Many people know the scripture that talks about that. Well, a part of repair is reparation as well. And so even having conversations about that was really, really important. So I felt this solemnness and heaviness about being in that space, that space that was just so important, but at the same time inspired to do the work that's in front of us.
You know, one of the things that resonated with me watching you out there too, I immediately went to you and the scarf that your sister made. Can you talk to us about that real quick?
Yeah, well, you know what's interesting? Many people might have seen the scarf that my sister Thea was able to take our great-great-great-grandfather's voter, this thing that allowed him to have the right to vote. He marked an X on it. He was from Georgia. He was a former slave. But what was interesting on the other side of the family, my sister Thea had also found a photo of our great-grandfather, and we put it on a bag, and I carried that bag not knowing that great-grandfather had actually, again from Georgia, was an entrepreneur, had done all these great things, and then was run out of his town, and at one point went to Oklahoma. I just learned that he had gone to Oklahoma, so we took that history with us, and I think it's just reminiscent of the fact that through all of these over 100 years, going back centuries, the generational wealth that could have been accumulated, like my kids are now entrepreneurs, but it took 4 generations for us to get back to that. And so even looking here in Delaware, the newly launched Black Chamber of Commerce and the conversations about, in Tulsa, not only did they have the massacre where the bombs were dropped on American soil, on Americans, buildings were burned, including churches, but then they rebuilt, and then a highway came through their city, similar to Wilmington.
Yeah.
And so even talking about what we can do to repair that history right here at home and in other parts of the country as well. So I got a chance to have this time my great-great-great-grandfather with me in the scarf, but also my great-grandfather, my mother's father with us as well on the journey, and my daughter. I took my daughter with me because it was just in a special place. And I wanted to experience it with her, as well as Senator Coons was there on the trip with us as well. Yes. And the president.
Yeah.
I must mention, he showed up too.
Delaware was representing very
Delaware
well.
was represented.
Yeah. I love that. So this dedication of the prayer wall, the church itself, because it was burned down to the basement, the church, it symbolizes resilience and hope. And right now with, COVID, our nation right now, and especially some things that are taking place here in Delaware, having that symbol of hope, going throughout our community, it's so empowering. It's what we need right now to give us inspiration to do more, especially when we get into gun violence.
Yeah. And you just recently were a part of a rally addressing gun violence. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, well, first of all, to your point about that dedication in the wall, I think it is symbolic of, even as we try to address the issues of gun violence and violence in general, that at that dedication, it was interfaith and multi-generational. And the reality is, in order for us to deal with some of these challenges, we're going to have a broad base of support in terms of making change. And as you guys know, I was fortunate to serve as CEO of the Urban League here in Delaware years ago. And at that time, we then came up with the Hope Commission because we had seen an increase in the number of guns and gun violence, and that led to the Achievement Center. And today, as a member of Congress, I get a chance to vote on bills that deal with background checks to make sure that, and we passed that in the House, to close the Charleston loophole, which many may remember that church in Charleston where that guy came in and shot up members of the church. And this closes that loophole. We're able to pass these bills, but I'm also trying to find resources to bring to Delaware. So for example, we put in a request for us to focus on gun violence here in our state. Everything from the work with the hospitals, it's called hospital intervention, to group violence interventions, to really just trying to find ways to support local communities. And right now I'm working on a major piece of legislation. Cory Booker is doing it on the Senate side, myself and Stephen Horsford on the House side, called Break the Cycle of Violence. And it is a comprehensive bill to really make sure that there are community-led and focused interventions, and that they're based on, the best evidence that's out there, the best practices that are out there. And so I'm really, I also added a piece to it that we hope to make sure stays included, that focuses on jobs, because that's my passion. I was Secretary of Labor. We got to keep that going. It's really important. So the work that's being done here with our General Assembly gives us hope. The community members that came out that day and that continue to be on the forefront and on the front lines gives us hope. And what I want to do is continue to make sure we support and those bills, that legislation that changes the laws, but also bring the resources here to Delaware so that we can deal with this issue, because it's Wilmington, but it's other parts of the state as well. And we just need to make sure we have a collective, an aggressive and comprehensive approach to dealing with violence.
Now, you were just recently advocating also for paid family leave.
Yes.
What can we as Delawareans do to help you with this initiative that you're pushing for?
Well, first of all, like I said, back to jobs. Like I just believe that people should be able to live their purpose. It could be a job, it could be as an entrepreneur. And so what we did this past week was we actually did like a little mini tour where we visited some of the small businesses, whether they were, a restaurant, a child care center, to talk about the caregiving economy. A lot of folks know that, without access to child care or elder care, or to be able to take care of a relative that has a disability, people can't go to work.
Right.
And so part of what we did on this mini tour was look at the past dollars that we brought to Delaware, like through the CARES Act for PPP loans that allowed some of these businesses to keep going. Another was a small business we visited that was a farm. And that, you know, she said if she had not had those resources, she might have had to close. And so looked at what we did in the past during this pandemic, but also talked about the potential for the future. We, in the American Rescue Plan, brought $108 million to Delaware for childcare. That's one of those things, and that's still not enough to cover all the needs that are out there. But we know in this pandemic, women were the ones that ended up leaving the workplace in record numbers. They called it a she-session instead of a recession, because it was women that a lot of
time
time
go home and take care of their children.
Exactly.
Through remote learning.
Exactly.
And,
so what I'm trying to get people to do is think of infrastructure a little bit differently, not the old school. We must build our bridges and roads. That's important. But it's also access to broadband internet. Because what we learned during the pandemic is that distance learning, telehealth, telework, you needed access to broadband internet. And so that's infrastructure to me. Housing, that's infrastructure. Because that builds wealth and it allows people to live a healthy, whole life, you know, and it helps with the education of our children. And then there's the caregiving economy. All those people out there that are working, some of whom not even making minimum wage, you know, and they're the ones that we want to support and uplift. So it's infrastructure in a whole new way for the future of work.
You have to have that foundation strong to build the house.
Exactly, exactly. Oh, I love that. That's that infrastructure. You need a foundation.
It's simplistic. If you don't take care of the essentials that everyday people, especially women of color, even seniors, what they need in order to get back up and out to work, how do you expect for anything to truly get to a place of reopening and back to a quote unquote normal or new normal?
And look, even, you know, the other way to think about it is, in addition to it helping our quality of life, it helps our competitiveness as a country. I mean, many people know I've lived in different places in the world, and they invest in workforce development. They invest in their infrastructure like transportation and making sure that, you know, people have access to high-speed internet. So to me, it's about our quality of life, but it's also about us as a country and being competitive in the world.
I love it. I love your message. I absolutely love what it is that you are looking to change, uplift, and how you want to empower everyone, taking care of this infrastructure so we can get back up and out. This is amazing.
It is.
Right.
And with the summer coming up, what else do you have coming down the pipe?
Oh my gosh, that is
You never rest. You just always on the go.
Look,
Always.
well, you know, it's so funny. The summer, like, first of all, it's here.
It is.
You know, and secondly, I haven't really thought about like beyond making sure that we get up and down the state, because August is a great month for us because we're out of session, but we're in our local districts, in our areas, and we're able. So I hope to be like going to a town near you and you and you, in a neighborhood near you, you and you. And then, you know, really just focusing on these three pillars that for me is about this year. Recover. We got to recover from this pandemic. We got to recover economically. Rebuilding. And I love that Build Back Better. I got a bill called Open Back Better that's like retrofitting our buildings for energy efficiency and climate. And so I'll be, you know, rebuilding. That's an important part. That's where the infrastructure as well. And then the last piece is restoration. I feel like we're in a moment where people are just, like I said, like that's why mental health is so important to me. We got to take care of our spirits, our health, our wellness, and we got to restore faith in each other. That, you know, for some of us, there never was that faith in each other, and so we got to build that. But in order for us to deal with the issues that are so important, it is going to take all of us recognizing that we're connected, whether we want to be or not. We are connected. And you know, you guys know I got into this after the unexpected passing of my husband. And when Charles died on his deathbed, I was like, why are we here? What is this all about? And clearly the Spirit said, it's about love.
Yeah.
If we love each other, you don't want to see people homeless. If you love each other, you don't want them to not be able to breathe the air or drink the water. You don't want them to be shot. You know, this purpose on this planet is about love. Love yourself, love each other, especially the people you don't love. Love the planet.
Yes.
And if you believe in God like I do, love God. That's it.
And that's why we love you.
That's
I
it.
know.
That's why we love you, because you lead with love
It's
and
all
do
about-
everything about service unto others.
And it ain't easy.
It-
Like love is
No,
not
no,
mushy,
no.
squishy.
No, it's
No,
not.
that stuff is hard. It's radical to like
Going
love.
beyond your feelings and still extending
Exactly.
grace and kindness.
Exactly.
And love.
And that's the
Exactly.
biggest part, extending grace.
Exactly. So love you guys.
Love you
Love
too. Thank you
Congresswoman.
so
Thank
much
you
for
for
spending
being
time
here.
with us today.
Yep. Special thanks to our Congresswoman Lisa Blunt Rochester. Many residents on the Riverside have struggled with dealing with getting to their appointments or handling their health issues with their insurance. Those two barriers or many of other barriers that are no longer going to be difficult because of the new recent Coker Resource Family Center. So I'm so excited that we have Miss BeBe Coker and Dr. Joan Coker. How are you, ladies?
Fine, thank you.
How are you doing?
We're good.
That's
We're
good. That was an awesome ribbon cutting.
Yes.
How'd you guys feel about that?
Well, it's the right thing to do. It was what Logan and staff are doing on in Riverside has long been talked about and talked about and talked about. And finally, because of their leadership and their passion and their integrity, they're saying yes. So Joan and the girls got together and they told me later what they were doing, and I
You
said,
just follow in
"Fine."
line.
Yeah, I just fall in line.
Is that what happens when the kids get
That's-
older? They
that's
start
right.
telling the parents what
Hey,
to do?
yeah.
Is that what happens?
That's it,
Okay.
pretty much.
Now, Dr. Coker, you know, one thing I love about you is every time I hit you up in the middle of this pandemic, you
Yes.
responded. You are quick with responding to serving this community. How did you feel being on the front line in the middle of this pandemic?
It was disheartening to begin with. Many of us in ENT, all of our patients cough. All of our patients have upper respiratory infections. So for us, we were concerned right out the gate because that's how each patient was presenting. So then the question becomes, is it safe to see them? Is it safe for your staff? And so we had to go virtual very early and only see those that were really sick until we got proper testing strategy in place. And once that was implemented, then we could slowly come back to in-person, encounters. But it was tough.
Yeah. Now, when I did the tour of the Resource Center after the ribbon cutting, I noticed there's a screen now for individuals that can come in and meet with a nurse virtually. Can you explain some of that? What is that about?
Yeah, it's state-of-the-art technology, and we are grateful for the partnership of Christiana Care.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing to have a virtual visit, but it's quite another when a nurse practitioner is available and can do some what we call endoscopic look, so I can see the ear, I can see the throat, because they have all of that camera activity, which will allow any physician to see the pathology and make a decision about care. So it's cutting edge technology, and it's perfect that it's starting in Riverside,
So how
in
did
the
you
Delaware
guys?
community.
So how did you guys feel when you first heard they wanted to name this after the family?
I was personally overwhelmed. I mean, when Logan called, his direct comment was, "We want to salute your mother. And the way that we want to do that is through this." And because it's in the wheelhouse of my sister and I, Laurie being a nurse, I'm a physician, Julie's in hospitality. So for us in understanding Mom's contributions, it was just the perfect thank you, for her service, but for us, it was next steps and how can we be a part of this? So it's amazing. And when I told Mom, I mean, you know, it's very rare, Jordan,
that
she is speechless. But she stopped in her tracks and she looked at me and I was like, yeah.
Wow.
And she was just delighted. And I would say a bit overwhelmed. Would you say, Mom?
I would say so.
Yeah.
Because I guess I've known Logan since he was born. And I'm sitting up here thinking, what is that boy doing? You know, it's not to try to act like you don't like awards and all that kind of stuff, but they know me. I always believed, do what you're gonna do and get amnesia. You know,
I like that. I like that.
But you're not ungrateful. That's not the point. But it's why is it that just as a community, we all feel like, okay, somebody has to recognize that we did this. No, they don't.
Yeah.
You need to recognize that you did this, and you need to recognize why you did this. I mean, you're a doctor. Why wouldn't you put something into a health resource center? Laurie's a nurse. Why wouldn't you do that? Julie is in hospitality. She knows how much it means for something to be convenient for other people. And Riverside was my first district or whatever they call it, casework district as a caseworker for the state of Delaware.
Wow.
And I'm telling you, I used to go and visit my so-called clients there and stuff. And I had some that were my favorites, of course, like anything else, others were not. The houses were kept nicely and all this kind of stuff. It was a nice area at one time. And then all of a sudden, people just kind of forgot, regardless of where you live, it's important to keep the place a community that you would want to live in.
Now, you know, I have to ask now, Dr. Coker, you know, I've been following your mom for a long time.
Yes.
All right. I first met her when I was 18.
Gotcha.
And one thing I know about your mom is she just never tires.
Right.
Whenever I hear BeBe Coker, I immediately go to never tires.
Yes.
You're the same way.
I know.
Is that where that comes from?
Yeah, I think I got a little BeBe 2.0 going. You know? I mean, the thing is, when you understand the needs, you can't grow weary. You know, just with the vaccine, a lot of folks, once their friends and family were vaccinated, they were done. You can't be done because the community that was stricken in the worst way is still not whole.
That's right.
So until the work is done, the work isn't done. So for us, the work continues.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I appreciate about the whole family, watching you all. You continue to serve and do it so humbly. And I appreciate all that you guys continue to do in this community. What can we as community folks, how can we help your efforts and what you're doing? You being on the front line, you Ms. Coker being so active in civil rights issues. Well, what can others do? Because there's a lot of folks that are watching this show right now and they're just like, you know, I always see Ms. BeBe Coker out talking about education, but how can I get involved? Or I'll see Dr. Joan Coker out helping folks get vaccinated. What can I do? So what would be your answer to that? So how can people get involved? What issues exactly can you see?
I don't think that other people should identify the issues that will attract the services of other people. What I believe, and I hear what you're saying, and I do not disagree with it, and there are plenty of times that we call for help, you know, for certain things and that kind of thing, but I believe that when people live in a community and you identify something that needs help, I don't care if it's getting trash off of a sidewalk or pulling the kids together to clean a curb, do it. That's important. There is nothing that is unimportant that has to do with positively impacting the lives of people. It just isn't.
I like that.
There's
because
nothing
I have a lot of friends that will see the glitz and glam of the big ribbon cutting and forget that the smallest little contribution you can do to your community is picking up a piece of trash.
That's right.
That's spot on.
Real simple. And for us right now, where we are trying to get on the other side of the pandemic, is those that are holdouts at this point, it really is a very personal matter for them. So you meet people where they are and you just keep talking.
Yeah.
You just keep talking.
Yeah.
You talk about the science, you talk about really at the end of the day, some people are like, I'm healthy, I had COVID, I came through, blah, 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 yeah. And they're right. But what about grandma?
Yeah.
What about the munchkins that aren't old enough to get it, that don't have a say in the matter? Grandma tried, She got vaccinated, but maybe her immune system wasn't robust and
Right.
she didn't respond
Right.
like she needed to, so you could still take her out. So for me in this pandemic, put yourself aside. Yes, you are healthy enough. Yes, you have a wonderful diet. Yes, you are an herbalist. Congratulations. Kudos.
Go be great.
But it's not a go be great. But it's so not about you.
Yeah.
It's about that 10-year-old
Yeah.
who has no choice.
Yeah.
It's that 7-year-old. It's that 97-year-old. It's that 80-year-old. It's that cancer patient. It's my brother-in-law, my sister, whomever that is that tried but may not be able to mount the response necessary to be whole. So at the end of the day, this whole pandemic's not about you. It's about your neighbor.
See, I feel
And
personally
Matt, can I
attacked.
just say something too, in relationship to the overall picture? That whole business that we're reading now from certain ends of the community, Fox News and all that kind of stuff, you're saying, no, we are not going to allow anybody to tell us to do this and tell you to do that and that kind of stuff. Number one, a government worth its salt is supposed to care enough about all of the people in it to, recognize when there is a problem and help the people to solve it. I don't have any problems with somebody telling me to get vaccinated for the purpose, my own purposes, and for the good of my neighbor. I mean, to me, that's to be expected. And the what is going around now in terms of government telling us what to do, I'm not going to wear this mask or whatever, to heck with all of that. You know what I mean? Who are you? Who are you? And when your child gets in trouble and you want somebody to do somersaults to make sure that your child is okay, think about the neighbor's child. Think about somebody else. So a lot of this, I think, I'm not, don't talk Republican, Democrat, or any of that crap. I'm talking about humanity. Let's redefine that word for ourselves. Come on.
Well, I'm not gonna lie, I personally feel attacked because I was one of the people that didn't want to get vaccinated at first, but I even made sure I called a certain doctor that's an ENT, and he said, educate yourself. And I'm glad that I did.
Here's what's great, Jordan. I wasn't getting vaccinated. I got to be honest with you.
Wow.
I was so dismayed by what was happening politically.
Yes,
And
that's even.
I mean, there's been so much mistrust, distrust, misinformation. And I'm a graduate of Tuskegee, so I understand the history in this country of experimentation. So for me, you could have my spot in line.
Right.
Yeah.
The game changer was when it didn't come out in time for the election.
Yeah.
So then I knew that science still mattered.
Yeah.
I knew that science still mattered. So
Yeah.
then I got on the calls, and there were calls to like keeping it real. And there were thousands of us, physicians of color, where they had everybody lined up that was in any position to talk to us. And we said, listen, tell us the truth. We knew we were the messengers, but what we weren't going to be is false prophets.
Ooh.
So tell me why this is okay. Tell me why this is safe.
Yeah.
Tell me why it's called warp speed.
Right.
Tell me all the innuendos.
Right.
And we got our answers, we did the research, and then we were ready to go.
Right. Yeah.
So what folks need to do is sit down, read the science.
Right.
Forget the Instagram posts, forget that nonsense. Oh, now we got
'Cause that's a
spoons
big
hanging off our
distraction.
neck.
No,
and
That's a
it
big
is.
distraction.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
It is. And
Yeah.
nobody needs to track
Yeah.
anybody with a tracking
Yeah.
device
Right.
because you won't leave home without your phone.
Phone.
That's
I mean,
You
you'll
walk
go
on
all
track.
the way back
Listen,
home.
that
You know what
is
I'm saying?
the
I'm
Apple
late for the
Watch.
meeting. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Fitbit,
Yeah,
Apple
all of
Watch,
that.
Yeah.
phone.
Yeah.
We don't need to track you,
Yeah.
boo.
Yeah.
You're good. We know exactly where you are. Thank you, though. Don't need to
No,
spend money on that.
I hear you. And I'm glad I educated myself, and I'm glad that I got vaccinated because you hit the nail on the head. For those that were weary and
Yep.
not too sure, my grandmother living with me.
Yes.
You know, she's 70. She deals with lupus.
Yes.
So So
yeah.
you know, and
Yeah.
she is one of those individuals that she was looking at me side eye like,
Yeah.
you better do something because I can't stay here if you ain't taking
Yeah.
care of yourself. So
Correct.
you hit the nail on the head. And
Yeah.
even further, my favorite aha is because that was for me. You know how politically involved I am was to see when the vaccine came out after the election.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's spot on for me.
Spot on.
Spot on.
But
So-
the other problem is initially, folks of color couldn't find it when it was out because we're working 1, 2, 3 jobs.
Yep.
So while folks are getting on the internet, finding different places all over, I'm just trying to work. I'm trying to keep the lights on, trying to keep food on the table. So that's why we were intentional. And I'm forever grateful to ENT and Allergy of Delaware because we knew we needed to make the calls, start with the churches because they're the second messenger.
Right.
Because you go to places that you are hopeful, where there's recovery and restoration. Nothing for us beats the Black church.
Right.
So we started with the ministers, had conversations, did the webinars with the folks, answered their questions, and then got them vaccinated. And the joy for me was when the churches would come to the office, then it was like homecoming, you know? I mean, they wouldn't leave. We're like, hey, your 15 minutes is up. You gotta go.
You want to sit there and talk?
They
You
wanna
saw
sit
me.
there
I'm
and talk.
taking
They were so glad to
selfies.
see each other.
I just saw Joan Coker. I just want to take
Yeah.
a selfie and sit there.
that's so
Well, how's
funny.
your day go?
Oh,
I was
just
having coffee.
Just fun. I
No.
mean, it was.
Yeah.
It's been a great ride, and now we're just. So when folks want to know what can I do, just keep talking.
Yeah, keep talking.
Keep talking.
Yeah.
Understood.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate both of you and your whole family. You, Lori, Julie, you, Miss BeBe. You know, I can always hit you up. I appreciate all that you guys do and your contribution to this community. And I know Riverside is really going to benefit from your resource center. And special thanks to Logan Herring,
Yes.
Kingswood,
Oh, Lord.
Shout out to
Christiana
Logan.
Care.
Yeah.
So I can't thank you guys enough. So I
Got it.
appreciate it.
Our pleasure.
Special thanks to the Coker family, Logan Herring and Kingswood. We'll be right back. With Father's Day coming up, I wanted to take time to recognize a lot of fathers in our community. These gentlemen are known as Pop, Dad. I call them mentors. And with me today, I'm excited to recognize the following gentlemen: Tyrone Jones, George Krapansky, Ted Blunt, Joel Coppage, Chris Simon. How are you guys? Happy Father's Day.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being here. I appreciate it. So listen, I'm gonna dive right into this, right? With Father's Day being here, I'm not a dad. My child's on 4 legs. Think back, how did you feel when you first heard the words from your wife, your girlfriend at the time, honey, we're having a child? What was that feeling like when you first heard those words?
I couldn't believe it.
Yeah? Yeah. What was that initial feeling like? Like, how did each of you feel in that moment?
And that's complete shock.
And that's
complete
was
shock
that the
amongst us
response?
all. I mean, at the end of the day, you look at it and you say, God bless us, you know, to be able to have a child.
Yeah.
But at the end, and at the same time, you're like thinking, my Lord, how are we going to make this happen?
Well, okay.
Am I ready for this?
Yeah, these are honest responses.
No,
These are
really.
honest responses.
I actually thought when my wife did tell me that, the first thing I thought about was, how am I going to do this? Second thing I thought about was my own dad. It was, he brought me to where I am right now for this moment. And I thought about her dad. Those are the 2 key people that I looked at as father figures growing up, was my father and my father-in-law. And I said, if I can be a little bit of him and a little bit of him, I'll be a good dad. So that's what I thought about.
How about you, Honorable?
For me, it was my freshman year in college, and we were playing Johnson C. Smith University. And after the game, I had gotten a call from my wife saying, "You're now a dad." And that was when Lisa was born. And so that was in February of 1962, and we lost the game.
No pressure.
Now, each of you have multiple kids, right? Right? Is that safe to say? Oh, you guys have multiple kids. What after the children are born and you're now a father of a household? Like, doesn't that feel like a lot of pressure? Like, how did you get to this thing called a rhythm of fatherhood? Like, how did you get there?
Well, for me, I was fortunate. I was in college, and my wife was staying with her parents during that time when I was in school. So I did not really have the true responsibility of being there her first 2 or 3 years because I was always away at school. And I was fortunate enough to have a family that was willing to stay there with us and to nurture us during those first 2 to 3 years. Because A, I didn't have any money, and B, I didn't have any job. So I had to totally depend upon my family for resiliency and to make sure that we could stay together.
I think for me, I was so tired that I couldn't really think of the big picture. I just was trying to get through the day. our first child didn't sleep very well, and it was just so much work. And I'd never been that tired. I mean, you just can't. The things you take for granted, sleeping in, or kind of doing things with your friends, or even your wife, those are gone, and you realize that you're really at the mercy of this child, and so I think early on I didn't really have a lot of time to think about the big picture, the ramifications of what was going on. I was just trying to survive, but it worked out, and you just get through it. I think that's one of the things you realize about being a parent and a father is that a lot of times you just have to get through things for your kids. You got to get through them, and by getting through them, you'll teach your kids how to get through their own life. So,
how about you, George?
Well, I have 3 kids, and with each one of them, I found while there were certainly going to be some challenges ahead, my heart just continued to grow. And there was always a way to do it.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to take a moment of personal privilege, because I really want to say to each of you that this is a real privilege, because each of you have played a very integral part in my life. While you all know about my childhood growing up, my grandparents raised me. Didn't have my grandfather, or my father, I should say, didn't have my father around, but my grandfather, David Webb, he took me in with his wife, my grandmother, Margaret, and each of you, as I was growing up, getting to learn and meet each of you, you guys have played a part. And, I've learned something new each time about just manhood alone. Like, what would you say to young fathers right now that are nervous when they see that they're about to have a kid on the way? What do you wish you had learned that you know now, that you could tell yourself then?
When I was, as I was raising my children, and I have 4, and I'm in a blended family, so I'm raising 2, and then I have 2, and so it is an opportunity really to be involved in a lot of people's lives. But I told myself I would not get married or have children until I was 30, because you don't really know yourself until you get to that point in time. I mean, you go through life's ups and downs in your 20s, and you're really trying to figure out who you are. And I tell my kids, don't have kids until you're 30. Get to know who you are as a man. Now, sometimes that's not going to happen. So you've got to connect with somebody within your circle of influence to be able to help you through. But you've got to know you in order for you to help give something to somebody else. And those are children, those are individuals who are looking for something from you.
I know for me, it was a situation where, I grew up in a neighborhood where not everybody always had a father that they could look to. And what I remember most is time goes by fast. And I would tell young people today is don't run from the moment, stay in the moment. It is so important, because you're gonna look up one day and that kid's gonna be 10, 12, 15 years old, and hopefully you had that time. I always say you have to invest. You have to invest the time right now while they're really young, and that'll pay huge dividends when they get older. And you'll see that. It'll be the little things that they just run to your arms when they're a teenager. I'm like, wow, she's still running to my arms. And that's great, So I spent a lot of time just focusing on keeping it in the moment. Even when my daughter got older and my son got older, and they both were 2 different kids. They came out of the same womb, 2 different distinct personalities. And I adapted. The way I taught my daughter and fathered her was totally different than the way I did my son. So I would tell young people, think about being in the moment. And even though you get tired, because we did, I know I got tired. My daughter was like, she did not sleep at all. I mean, my son was perfect. She was just the opposite. Right. Ted knows. And this is fatherhood, real stuff. Ted fathered my daughter too.
Wow. Wow.
He did. I mean, she would have some issues, and he, thanks to Ted. Thanks to Mr. Blunt. I appreciate it. Mr. Blunt. Yeah. And he fathered me. I mean, he was hard on me when I was a basketball player and played for him on the All-Star team. I still haven't forgotten that. But it was a lesson. It was a lesson. So fathers can be anybody. Yeah. Not just who's in the household. Anybody can be a father. Not everybody can be a dad.
Right.
And he was like a dad.
Right. So what did you learn, George?
There's a lot of pressure to provide, to give your kids everything they want. And I guess the one thing I learned, it's not what you leave your kids, it's what you leave in your kids that counts.
You know, it's funny that you even say that. Two things that come to mind I'll never forget. Like I said, each of you have played a very big part in my life. I'll never forget my first job at Cross and Simon, working with Chris. I'll never forget. I was just interning, doing some work, and I'll never forget. I was getting ready to leave, and we were doing some kind of deal, and I was walking out the office, and he's like, "Hey, you shook my hand. You look me dead in my eye when you shake my hand." I was like, "What the heck does that mean?" And it's just little stuff like that that I was just like, "Oh, okay." And mind you, I'm fresh out of high school, little stuff like that. Or George sharing with me Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I was like, "What is Maslow? I don't know this stuff." You know, or Ted, "Jordan, you're a grown man. Stop wearing shorts on a campaign." Or, you know, I mean, it's the small stuff that I'm really appreciative from each of you guys. Like, have each of you had moments like that you value those small little lessons that you learned growing up?
You know, my first mentor obviously is my father, and he raised 8 children, and I was the only one from that 8 who went to college. And it was because of something he did and said to me in 9th grade. And I wanted to go out and hang out with everyone else in the street and so forth, and didn't want to play football. And he stopped, he says, "Yes, you are, you're going to play football." And he forced me to play football. Well, the reason why I bring that up is because if he didn't stop me, if he just allowed me to do whatever I wanted to do, I would not have realized that that was going to be that golden moment, that moment where I went and played football that year, did great, and ended up over the next 4 years, got a scholarship to play football at the University of Delaware. First one in my family. But it was that moment that he stepped in. And for us, it's that moment where we have to step in. We don't know when it's going to be in our children's lives, in your life, in anyone's life who comes and we're so blessed to be able to be a part of their lives. We don't know what that moment will be, but it's going to be for us just to give what was given to us so that it could help you maneuver through whatever obstacle you have to go through.
I got some great advice. Some of the best advice I remember was a book. It had nothing to do with kids. I got a dog, and it was a book about training a dog how to retrieve for hunting. And the preface for the book talked about how, you know, the author said, you know, when you see a dog jumping around, chasing everything and running around, chasing his tail and jumping on people, that's not a happy dog. That dog is confused and undisciplined, and it's not a happy dog. And dogs really want discipline. They really want they want to know how to do something. They really like to be disciplined, and they really like to perform, you know, hard tasks for, you know, the hunter. And to take that to kids, I mean, kids want to do whatever they want to do all the time. They're not necessarily happy. And you think you might make them happy if you give them all the freedom and all the things that they may want. But discipline and that ability to, you know, control yourself in situations and apply yourself in the right circumstances to do tough, challenging tasks makes you happy. And suddenly it made sense why my dad was so tough on me. That, you know, it was all the discipline he was imparting, and, you know, I was happier when I was disciplined. So that was a really important lesson that I didn't take from my father when he was doing it to me, but I picked it up in that.
You know, it's funny, and you're spot on for sharing that, because in 2021, I was sharing what each of you have taught me. Joel and Tyrone, I don't know if they remember this, but me just getting ready to try and jump into a campaign running for office, right? You know, being a millennial in 2021, I would love to hear your opinion. You know, my generation, we want things fast, you know, because that's how we're getting things. We're able to access things real fast. But I'll never forget just getting ready to run for office. I'm just running with my mind and thoughts and wanting to do things. And both of them were like, I remember I sat down with them individually, like, slow down. Slow down. You don't have to move so fast. And with that being said, do you feel like my generation, I'll say, or just any kind of young men in general, what kind of advice when it comes to, in 2021, trying to move so fast? You know, I know why I want things so fast, because I'm trying to seek opportunities, seize the moment, as you guys were sharing, but why slow down? Why do that?
Well, you know, you and I had a lot of conversations.
Yeah.
And you know, every generation probably I felt that way. I wanted everything to happen. I don't think it was just your generation. And I think every generation, at least for me, I felt the exact same way that you did. But I was fortunate to have somebody to sit down with me and say, hey, listen, have a plan, think it through. And that was the advice I was trying to give to you as well as others, my kids, other kids in the neighborhood I may have coached somewhere along the line or from church or whatever, is just think through very carefully about what steps. I'm a very prayerful, spiritual person. I always say look to the higher power in terms of where they might be leading you in your path, and listen. Because a lot of times we don't listen or don't look for, and we use the eyes more than the ears. And if you allow yourself to be surrounded by these wonderful gentlemen that I'm sharing this panel with, to say, what can I learn and what can I listen to have that be a part of me to help set that course in that direction. That's what I will continue to tell you, as well as others, that that's an important thing, and we always want that now. That's not a bad thing, but how you do it, what you do and how you do it.
What about you, George?
Yeah, I think that for me, I came along at a time when the community was what nurtured me, more so than just my immediate family. The community dealt with the recreation center, a recreation leader, dealt with the teacher, it dealt with the school principal, it dealt with the neighborhood gang leader. But the important thing was you can learn from everybody. And in fact, I shared this with you when you were running for office. The 4 key words: listen and don't lie. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Most people don't listen and most people lie. And if you can get people to understand that that's important. Also, I told my kids, you become what you see unless you see what you want to become. We all have sight. We can see whatever we want to see, but very few of us have vision to know where we want to go. And that's the kind of message and information that I tried to pass on to my children and to their children. And then third, the word no. Learn how to say no to children. So often we're accustomed to trying to accommodate rather than to teach. When you accommodate, that means you're compromising. When you're teaching, you're not compromising. And youngsters learn from you. They pick up what you do and how you handle situations. And most of us cannot deal with conflict. And that's when young people come to you. But if you don't start communicating with them from grade 1 to grade 3, you're in deep trouble. Because after the 3rd grade, they no longer listen. And then you've got to involve them in the things that you do. I like going to the park. I take them to the park. I like going to libraries. I take them to the libraries. I like going to the zoo. I take them to the zoo. So they have to be around you and be engaged with you. But understand there's a time when you speak and there's a time when you shut up. And in my house, when my kids said to me, Dad, we want to eat in the dining room, I told them it took me 33 years to get to eat in the dining room. I started from the basement steps, up to the steps on the basement, to the top of the steps, to the kitchen, to eventually to eat in the dining room. And that was when I had my own house. And so I said, there's a price you pay in life. You have to gradually get it. But if you get it all at once, you're not going to know how to handle it. What comes quick goes quick.
Tyrone, any thoughts on that?
I'm listening to the elders of the circle here, and people always say, that was then, this is now. Because the circles of influence on a lot of our kids right now is not just relegated to that small community. You've got the internet, you've got the cell phones, you've got all these things that are now influencing our kids. So now we've got to figure out how do we maneuver through that conversation that they may be getting from somebody else. And what they're getting from somebody else is not necessarily going to be for their well-being. So for me, my children, there are 3 things that I tell them. There's a formula, and I shared it with you. It's knowledge. K plus U equals W. Knowledge, you got to get as much knowledge as you possibly can. But once you get the knowledge, there's got to be understanding. And understanding doesn't come by you just basically thinking you're going to get it through osmosis. It's going to be either through experience or it's going to be through somebody else sharing it with you or giving you a deeper sense of understanding about that particular piece of knowledge that you've been getting. Teacher, whomever. And then we got K plus U equals W. And W is what? Wisdom, because that's what we have up here. You have wisdom that has been gathered over years based on the knowledge and understanding that they've received. And now they're applying that knowledge and that understanding, they're applying it. That's being wise. I'm trying to teach my kids how to be wise through every circumstance or situation that may come up. So get the knowledge. If you don't understand it, let's figure it out. But then you've got to figure out how do you apply it when you get outside my home, or when you're engaging other people, or when you're even raising your own children. So for you, it was about that. It's about getting knowledge, understanding about what it is that you're about, and now apply it when you get ready to engage others.
I'm sorry, but the other point is engagement. We have to be engaged with not only our children, but their friends. We need to know who their friends are and not be afraid to ask. And we need to be visible in situations where they are, at school, in the playground, in the community. People need to know that that's your child. When something goes down, they're going to make sure that Dad's going to get a phone call. Because if you act up before you get home, I'm going to know about it. And you don't want me to be upset about anything.
That neighborhood thing
Wait a minute.
was real. I mean, my neighborhood was the same way as Ted's was. Now, if I could do something wrong down the street, and by the time I got home, that message was already there. Yeah. But it was a good thing to be able to have the whole village and neighborhood watching you and raising you at the same time. That is different from what it is today.
But gentlemen, we know that village does not exist in that form and fashion, and we've got to figure out how do we create it, whether it's virtually or whether it's some form and fashion. I think that's what we've learned from the pandemic, is that we can connect with people now virtually. You can do a Zoom, so I can get the whole family together, and we can all sit and talk about circumstances, situations. But before pandemic, we weren't doing that. So we've got to create, how do we create that village?
Yeah, because I'm gonna tell you right now, as individuals that I associate with in my age bracket, they also look up to a lot of you, and would love the opportunity to sit with you. But I've even heard folks my age feel either intimidated or not able to connect, because it's like, if I don't want to come incorrect or feel like being told something I don't want to hear. But one thing I learned from George is, just the level of respect, and I try to share that with my peers, that, I'm quickly to pick up the phone because I have a lot of respect for you guys, for everything that you've instilled in me. So I really appreciate you guys for that. So, and I encourage, pick up the phone. I tell my friends that, and I'm asking you guys, pick up the phone to keep sharing what you've been sharing with me with others my age bracket. So.
And we're proud of you too.
Thank you. I'd be remiss if I didn't share. You all know, while he's not here, late great Jim Gilliam Sr. I'm really appreciative of all his teachings as well. One of his favorite things is tell me I'll hear, show me I'll listen, involve me I'll understand. And ironically, I don't know if you remember Ted, but my grandfather, David Webb, he used to drive for Congo, and he would share with me stories about you and driving you and James Gilliam Sr. around when he was younger. So, I really appreciate you gentlemen for everything that you guys have done for me and keep teaching me. And, I'm very big on time. I'm very big on, my grandfather taught me when you're early, you're on time. When you're on time, you're late. So if you could take, I'm gonna have an Oprah moment. Look under your seats. Got a gift for you.
Is there keys to a car?
I don't know if I have a DETV. I don't know if we've gotten there yet, but if I haven't got a surprise, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. But no. Lean in. Lean down. Go ahead and grab those gifts, and that is for you, from me.
All right.
Go ahead and open them.
Damn, a watch.
Yeah.
Thank you.
A watch.
You gotta wear it now.
Yeah. So you were just saying you needed one, right?
Wear one.
No, you gotta wear one. Yeah. There you go. But I really appreciate you guys. I really do.
Yeah.
So happy Father's Day to you, gentlemen.
Is this Rolex?
Listen, I ain't got like
Or
that.
is this Rover?
That's Rolex. No, I'm just kidding. But I really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. Happy Father's Day to you guys. Thanks.